What is behind the high level of unemployment among young South Africans? And how much does the current state of the economy impact employment opportunities? What are South Africa's crime patterns? What is the difference between Stats SA's crime stats and SABC's crime stats? What time is it? It's question time. Welcome to Question Time. My name is Mpho Tsedi. When releasing statistics on the social profile of youth 2009 to 2014, a fortnight ago, that is, Ntate Padi Lehohla said, and I quote, "When parents are better equipped than the children, it's a sign of regression," close quote. That jobs are linked to education levels cannot be overemphasized, with those without matric most likely to remain unemployed. The research has also revealed a sharp decline in bachelor degree completion rates among Black, African, and colored students since the mid-1990s. Meanwhile, today's Stats SA released crime stats, and we'll also be looking at that in today's episode. We are not live, and therefore we're not going to be able to take your calls, but do tweet us. Our Twitter handle @QuestionTime24. My guest, Ntate Padi Lehohla, is the Statistician General of South Africa and head of Stats SA, Statistics South Africa, that is. Ntate Lehohla, welcome. It's quite...
that is a good day.
Yes. Well, perhaps let's just round up the youth unemployment figures, stats, before we go into today's presentation.
Well, let me start first by saying South Africans must continue to fill up the forms on the community survey, which the results of which we'll release in June.
Okay.
It's been running for some time, because it's only when we do so that we'll get this tapestry of information.
Yes.
But yes, coming into the issues around unemployment, youth unemployment, as well as crime. The situation in South Africa is a very difficult one, because it impacts, and the two reports, both the one on employment and the one on crime, focuses on, draws our attention to the people that are 15 to 34. And that's the future. Because these are the people that are linking the very young to the elderly.
Okay.
And if that link is dislocated or has signs of dislocation, then as society, we must be worried. And the dislocations are, the youth are hungry, they are not educated, they are not employed, they are likely to be involved in crime, both as perpetrators and as victims of crime. So that dislocation creates and recreates, or produces and reproduces, a situation that is not very comforting. And when it happens to a sector of the population predominantly that consists of 90% of the population, both the colored and the Black population, 90% of the population, then it's a major cause for concern, these numbers. Yes, yeah.
And how much a factor is education?
Obviously. You see, in life, the mind, the brain of all living things, particularly in the animal kingdom, it is only to date the human being that can invent things. The lion will live like a lion all the time, since time immemorial. The elephant the same, the cattle, the dogs may be taught a few tricks. But human beings have actually invented, to the point where we invent the cell phone, we can talk all over. And that is a product of irrigating the brain to do certain things.
Yes.
If we can't irrigate the brain, then we live life just like lions and dogs and all those kinds of things. So education is absolutely a must. It's a crucial ingredient that turns and makes the mind work well. and defines development and then follows up on that development. So education is the end, is the alpha and omega.
Yes.
Yes.
But are young people not unemployed because they do not have education? Are we talking about employable young people who are not employed?
Well, I mean, if you look at graduate unemployment, it's a very low unemployment. If we had that level of unemployment in South Africa, it would be Nineveh, yeah. I mean, it would be a very interesting place because it's about 11%.
Yes.
But when you look at this other side of unemployment, 57% of the people that are with matric or lower are unemployed. That is, or rather, unemployment levels for those is about 57%. So it's very high. So education comes to prove that it is the solution to the problems in South Africa. And of course, we know history, how it determined levels of unemployment. Apartheid, Prime Minister Verwoerd in 1953 said, what's the use of teaching Bantu child mathematics? And then subsequent to that, in Parliament, set of laws that set South Africa back millennia by millennia, hundreds of years back. Yeah. So that's the situation.
Okay.
So education is very clearly, I mean, if you look at the progression of whites and Indians, because of their education levels, which are increasing, white youth experience only 5%, 6% unemployment, which is basically full employment for all intents and purposes anyway.
Let's talk about this graphic that we have here. What are you explaining here?
You see, here you are looking at the share of the youth amongst the unemployed. I mean, in 2009, it was 71%. It has declined to 66%. What we are seeing here in that it's not that unemployment amongst the youth has declined. It's the share of the population that is young has actually declined. In good part, it is driven by that. However, it still shows that the burden of unemployment is still highest amongst the youth. So it reflects two things. The one is that the share of the population of the young compared to in 2009 to 2014, that share of the population has actually declined. And South Africa is beginning not so much to be an aging population, but it's beginning to have a shift of the elderly population into, of the population into the elderly ages of 34 and above. Okay. And this is where the demographic dividend becomes an issue, because as we progress and becoming older, we have not had the opportunity of actually working in these ages and providing a market for goods and services, as well as producing things as a black young people. So that demographic dividend has been lost. So that window of opportunity is gone. So the challenge for South Africa is not only about harnessing a demographic dividend because it no longer exists, but is to ensure that these people that are becoming older, how will they be supported by those that are yet to be born? And therefore, how do we deepen, much deeper, the skill base of those that are coming? Because they are going to be confronted by this population, which has gone through life without any savings, without any work, and they must support them, because they'll be alive anyway, those that are elderly.
Then you have noted that there's been an increment in the dropouts of university students. They are dropping out without completing their bachelor degrees.
Yes, indeed. Many people are saying, no, we have many people in universities of late. I say, yes, of course. The population has also grown.
Yeah.
So you have a numerator that is growing and a denominator that are growing at the same time. The only way you can understand whether change is actually occurring is when you look at proportions of people that are progressing. And the graph shows, I think if you go forward faster, you will see that that graph actually shows that for whites and Indians, the graph is moving north. For coloreds and blacks, it is actually moving south. So whatever number you have, it suggests that you actually will never fill the dam because your rate of leakage in the dam is much faster than the rate of intake into the dam. That's basically, if one were to explain it that way.
Yeah.
And if we sustain that, it means the dam will be dry. There'll be no water.
Okay.
So I think policy people should understand this. I know that Professor Taylor wrote in the Business Day last week about this issue. And I have said, no, Dr. Taylor, we cannot use number of people who have graduated in the general population. While it is a statistic, it actually is meaningless if you have graduates over even the children who are young. But you have to look at the population at risk, those that are in matric, proceeding to university, and the proportion that completes, because that's the population at risk. Okay. And if you begin to grasp that, then you can actually articulate your policy differently.
Okay, hold it there. When we return, I want us to talk about the crime patterns, and you must tell us what's the difference between your stats and SAP's stats, or maybe it's the same thing. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return to continue our discussion with Mdadipadi Yohosha.
The souls, the OMG of the party, in all their glorious, well, glory. Ah, yes, we salute you, party comrade, with a bottle of 3 Ships whiskey for just $119.99 from Tops at Spa.
They are basically arresting him, continue to arrest him on behalf of the apartheid government.
We are dealing with effects. We are not dealing with the causes. And for as long as we deal with effects, we are never going to solve this problem.
What do these people need in prison? Why are they there? The PAC, as Dr. Peku is saying, has been seeking answers, and they're not coming.
What kind of answers are you getting?
I really think I've answered that question.
I think it's a difficult question. I don't have an answer for it. How was it possible that they could operate with such impunity?
The only thing you want is closure.
The only thing we want is closure. And unfortunately, I don't really have sympathy for the idea that if you're too old, you shouldn't stand trial.
That's Rights and Recourse with Dumile Mateza, every Sunday at 2 p.m. Central African Time, only on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back to Question Time. Mdadipadi Yohosha is my guest today. He's the Statistician General from Stats SA. Mdadipadi Yohosha, let's talk about the presentation that you were making today regarding crime. And perhaps let's start at this point. What's the difference between your crime stats and the South African Police Service stats?
The statistics of the country are the remit of the Statistician General. There will be different sources, and there is a responsibility of the Statistician General to make sense of these numbers and bring them together and make sense. So there is nothing called police stats. It's statistics under the remit of the Statistics Act, which gives power to the Statistician General. Now, coming to the question that we have asked, though, the sources of statistics and the Act does make this point that the Statistician General must choose, using the best methods, data available to produce statistics.
Okay.
Now, when you look at criminal acts or even acts of going to school, through that process, there are statistics that are produced. Children who go to school, the daily register that the child was at school or not, present say, absent say, so all those are statistics. They are registers that you use, out of which you can compile statistics. The report of a rape at a police station, the report of a theft at a police station are sources of statistical data. The murder that is reported at a police station and an inquest that follows is a source of statistics. Then there is a household survey program that where you go into households and ask households whether they've experienced crime or not, and what are their views around crime. And that's all statistics. The statistician general assembles all this data to produce a statistical document.
Yeah.
Now, there could be differences, of course, in this. For instance, if you look at things like rape, it's a humiliating crime to the victim, and the victim may not like to report.
Yeah.
But when you go to a household, and they will tell you that, yes, there was this that happened, but I couldn't report because I knew that there are consequences of prosecution, and because this thing has happened amongst friends, you don't want your friend to be prosecuted, and of course, the friend goes and repeats the crime again. So these are the kind of statistics. So you'll find discrepancies between administrative records and household-based survey.
Okay.
And that's how you deal with those. When it comes to murder, the records are almost the same. The difference is only 5% because there is an inquest, there's prosecution.
Okay.
When it comes to a car being stolen, the same thing. The records are very close because there is an insurance that through which you have to claim the car.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, what are the crime patterns?
Well, if you look at crime patterns from 2011 to now, they have remained stable. But as they remain stable, we also know that the crimes are very violent. And that they are biased against women.
Okay.
They happen amongst people who know one another. And they happen in homes. Now, that raises a very big question as to whether these crimes can be policed using the policemen. We don't have a policeman in every household. Even when they are in their own households, they commit crime, they shoot and do all kinds of things. So these are crimes of a nature that requires to address a dysfunctional system of family and households. If you look at what are the causes of the crime, intermediate, as people say, well, that one was jealous about this, and in a number of situations where there are these assaults and so on, it's about jealousy, it's about money, it's about those kinds of things. But at the bottom of it, it's inequality. And blacks are the most unequal in South Africa society.
How so?
Yes, indeed. We are the most unequal. Our Gini coefficient, which measures the level of inequality, is 57.57. That of whites is at 38, because they all have better salaries, better living conditions, so the difference amongst them is small.
You're talking politics now.
No, I'm not talking politics, I'm telling you statistics. I'm talking about the salt of politics, which is statistics. And then among Indians, it has been declining. So when we have inequality of the nature that we have amongst blacks in South Africa, you expect this jealousy, this anger against a family member or a person in the street and so on and so on. It breeds in that kind of environment. So it's a very, very difficult environment.
So the perpetrators are in which age group?
15 to 34. These are the people who are hungry, who do not have education, who are more likely to be unemployed, who are prone to disease, and therefore also very much, or let me not say therefore, but very much prone to be perpetrators of crime. So, and they are a link between those who are 35 and above and those who are 0 to 14. They define the path of those who are exiting and those who are coming in.
Okay.
And that, I think, is the difficulty that we find ourselves in, and the data, the salt of politics, which is statistics,
Yes.
is providing the salt so that politics can function.
Now, violent crimes have increased.
Well, somewhat, not dramatically. It remained almost stable. But and all crimes have more or less remained stable. But in the public mind,
Yes.
crimes have increased. That is about 43% say crime have increased. 38 say it has gone down. About 13 say it has stayed the same. So over the majority of people think that crime has increased.
Why do they think so when...
I think when it is persistently stable, but also very violent. And of course, it's shocking. It traumatizes. Therefore, it has a drum effect. Yes.
Now, there's a concern which the police have raised, which you've also alluded to, that some crimes are not reported and thereby perhaps not giving accurate assessment of the problem or the challenges that communities are facing. Why are people not reporting crime?
Well, I mean, these things are a product of society. I mean, it's a creature of society. And if society says, well, yes, it's a criminal offense, but it has happened in the household, how do we solve it? Because it happens largely in households. I mean, women carry the brunt of this. 73 women in any type of crime where there is a murder perpetrated, it occurs in every 100, 73% of the time, 73 times, it will be for a household that is headed by a woman. If it's a sexual offense, 71% in 100, or 71 out of 100, it will be a woman who is single. So they have this coming together, the melting point of crime, and they have the responsibility to bring up children. You can imagine what trauma goes in there. And of course, we have this phenomenon in South Africa, where 60% of the men say, 60% of the fathers say they are married against 30% of the mothers who say they are married. Now, I mean, in a population where men and women are almost equal, you can't have that kind of discrepancy. And that discrepancy describes the dysfunctionality of South African society, in particular in bringing up children and taking responsibility for their education. I'm not saying any marriage or anything. No. I'm just saying, when you have created life, you've got to take care of that life. You can't just procreate and think that you cannot be responsible for that life. And that's the problem with men in our country.
Okay.
And it creates these kinds of situations.
And then the perception among some South Africans that, no, the people who are committing these crimes are not South Africans. It's Zimbabweans.
So in Sesotho, that's what we say.
Yeah.
That the big shit is the one who comes from outside. The one for the local is the small shit. That's how we say it in Sesotho. My apologies for the language, but that's a straight translation of Sesotho. So everybody will always want to look across instead of confronting their difficulties. The data shows that most of the time these are people who know one another. In fact, it happens in the confines and privacy of homes, these kinds of crimes.
It's not some strangers.
It's not some strangers, no.
I mean, thank you for the time.
No, thank you
really
very much.
Appreciate it. And
thank
next time you release some more stats, we'll definitely have
Well,
you
we'll be looking at some of the programs of government, such as the nodes. In 2001, there was a nodal, urban and rural nodes and development. We have taken a 13-year view of what happened in these nodes and on the 12 cities.
You will come and share them with us.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much, Kendatele Oshayenu. And that was question time for today. Big thank you to my guests and to you for watching the show. From me and the crew, you have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.